What a week it's been for Barcelona, and it's not over yet. Over the next 2 days, it's set to be centre of attention once again. Well, the new camp's set to be this quiet for the next few months. After Barca humbled Chelsea in midweek to make the Champions League final, the European football season is finally drawing to a close. Perfect timing, because for the first time in '09, F1 touches down in Europe. And while the start of the season has been cause for celebration for some,
3 wins out of 4 for Jenson Button. The checkered flag is out and it waves for Sebastian Vettel.
For others, well, the season starts now. So, time for some to step up to the plate here, 3,000 miles away from Jenson's impressive drive in the desert. It's the rolling countryside of Catalonia and qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix. Last year, Ferrari's dominance was punctuated by a dramatic accident for Heikki Kovalainen. The track has since been altered, along with F1's pecking order. And taking a look at the calendar, we can see we're now a quarter of the way through the season and Brawn remained dominant. The pressure is really building for the likes of Ferrari to start performing. And if we have a look at the driver standings as well, you can see that Jenson Button is 12 points clear at the front as far as the drivers are concerned. Sebastian Vettel is snapping at Rubens Barrichello's heels. But the former Honda team's dominance really becomes clear when you consider the constructors' battle. And you can see they've garnered almost double the points of Red Bull and Toyota. And if it's winning points in Formula One that you're after, well, we've got two of the perfect men for you, Eddie Jordan and David Coulthard. I tried to work out how many you'd got between you, but I gave up after about 10 minutes. But Eddie, great to see you again. And we're here in Europe, and traditionally for Formula One, this is sort of the start of the season all over again. Just walking around, you feel that everybody's very energised about being here.
Well, it's the start of Europe. Traditionally, Europe was the start of when people brought out their new cars. That changed this year because it was a brand new set of regulations which made new teams and made the teams themselves bring out their new cars at the beginning of the season for Australia. That traditionally was never the case. They always came here. But I think it's really good to have it the way it is, because then you know what car they have at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that hasn't changed, of course, we can change continents, but the engines are just as loud as ever. David, let's have a quick chat about, well, I suppose the one man who calls this home. I mean, the drivers test here a lot. They all know this circuit really well, but for one man, this is his home patch, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Barcelona is where most of the teams do the testing. But what has changed so much is when Fernando Alonso started in Formula One, we used to come here, the grandstands would be empty. Now, when we have a test here, it's like a full-on Grand Prix, and you can see all the way around this circuit the Spanish flags hanging over. Huge support for Fernando.
Now, I'm not sure what your sort of reference point of mania is. For some of you, it might be McFly mania. For others, maybe Beetle mania. But Alonso mania is very impressive indeed. Have a look at yesterday when he was here. Well, look at that, DC. It's like an afternoon out at Knock Hill, isn't it, for you?
I'm sorry, Jake, the noise of the engine there, I didn't catch that.
I was just saying, it's just like you hanging out in Scotland. But, Eddie, let's have a quick mention about what it's like to race at your home circuit. Nigel Mansell used to say it gave him an extra second at the British Grand Prix. And Fernando Alonso tends to impress here, doesn't he?
Well, Well, he does, and I think David quite rightly said that he's brought a new dimension to the people of Spain. We all know how passionate they are about their motorcycles, and this is what has happened by coming here and making a world champion that he is and deserved to be. Twice world champion, he's an amazing character, and he has invigorated the whole of Spain into watching Grand Prix racing again.
That's better, isn't it, DC?
Yeah, I should be able to answer your question now. Sorry, did you ask me something about a day out in Scotland? Is that
No,
because of the...
I was just saying, Fernando Alonso arriving here, it's like you having a day out at the Knock Hill circuit, eh?
Well, indeed, that's where it all started for me, but it was a winter's day in December, and I don't even think there was a marshal there, so a bit different to the sort of support that Fernando has.
And did you have a particular circuit that as you travelled the world you got immense support?
Well, I think Silverstone, of course, being a British driver and then having the win there in 2000 and 2001, that was the highlight of my career.
OK, well, as it's gone nice and quiet in the Brawn garage, hopefully very shortly Ross Brawn will pop out to there and have a little bit of a chat with us. We've got an awful lot to discuss with him because the very future of Formula One has been called into question over the past few weeks, and it's no surprise, really. Take Eddie as an example. In 1991, the Jordan team came 5th in the World Championship with a budget of $10 million. Last year, Toro Rosso paid $130 million for the privilege of just coming 6th, and all in the midst of a credit crunch. Well, something had to give, and this week it did, when the governing body announced the new cut price opportunity to race in Formula One. $40 million open to any team as long as you come under that budget cap. If you want to race for $40 million, you can. It's entirely up to you. Here's Lee to explain more.
How much does £40 million buy you in the world of Formula One? Success, a new team, or quite simply not enough? That's what the current crop of Formula One teams are being forced to decide within the next 3 weeks. $40 million is the budget cap being imposed by the World Motorsport Council, but it doesn't include drivers' salaries, engines or marketing, and no team has to opt in. But will it create a two-tier championship, and will it drive some of the manufacturers out of the sport altogether?
We can't enter the future championship with two rules which are quite different. I think our analysis is that at 40 million the cars will have 2 to 3 second advantage. And I think it's not about budget, it's about value of Formula One for a major corporation. I think we're very happy to stay in Formula One. We want to be a contributor and a good citizen in the environment. But I think now we really have to stand back and wait to see what transpires in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
All teams and the FIA are focused on reducing costs. I think it's very important we don't end up with a two-tier championship. That one set of regulations, I think, is imperative for all teams so that we have absolute clarity.
Although we've been in favour of a budget cap, I don't think we've ever complained that it's not fair when teams have been spending maybe 5 or 6 times the amount of money that we have. We've always had the view that the rules are the rules, and we've got it's a competition to try and raise as good a budget as you can, and then it's a question of going out and trying to use that effectively on the track.
I think it's right for all the parties, all the teams within FOTA and the FIA to work together, make sure that we have a sustainable Formula One.
We're broadly in favour of a budget cap. I think it is the way for Formula One to go for the future, but I think we need quite a lot more discussion on the detail on how it's going to be achieved.
Most of us believe that running under one set of rules would be a good outcome. But we're in challenging times, so I don't think we should be closed to any solution if it's going to lead to a healthier and stronger Formula One.
Well, a mix of views there from across the Formula One paddock. One man who was missing is Ross Brawn. I'm delighted to say that he's with us now. And Ross, it seems that it's not a budget cap that's causing the issue for the teams. It's this potential of two-tier Formula One racing. No one's in favour of that, are they?
I don't think so. I don't think it's great. I think it's confusing for the public. And I'm not sure there's merit in winning a race when you've got a huge technical advantage from the regulations. But we've got to do something to bring down the cost of Formula One, and we've got to do it quickly. OK, so the aim of the game now for the Formula One Teams Association, of course, and you sit in on those meetings all the time, is to try and work out a solution here. And it's obviously very difficult because while there's maybe Force India and Williams and yourself on one side of the table, you've got the big car manufacturers, the likes of BMW and Ferrari on the other. How hard is it for FOTA to try and work together when this is an issue that really does make the teams sit poles apart from each other in terms of what they want out of the sport? Well, maybe there's differences in these areas, but there's other things within FOTA that the teams have to work together on. And we know as an association we'll have some influence. If we try and influence things individually, we're not as strong. So we have to find a way of resolving this, because there are different needs. But if we can resolve the differences and find a solution that's compatible to everyone, palatable to everyone, then. But I think FOTA will hold together on this.
I know it's hard for you to talk about FOTA as a whole when it's your personal opinion, but if, for example, you were the head of FOTA for a day, what would you want the solution to be? Is there a way out of this for everybody?
Well, I come from this from an engineering perspective, and what I think we're doing at the moment is we're just tightening the rules up so much that there's hardly any space to move. And what we should do is open them up and say you can have this much money or you can have this many people, do what you want, but that is a restriction. And put a boundary around it and allow people to work that area and keep the cost contained within that boundary. Budget cap will do it, maybe a headcount reduction will do it with other constraints. There's a few things that can be done. But I think by trying to control costs by the regulations themselves, we're just ending up with standard cars with no scope. I mean, it's been a great year this year because the rules opened up and lots of different ideas and they all came through. It's exciting. That's what we want in football. We want teams with different ideas, innovations, making a big jump. But we've got to keep the costs, we've got to keep an umbrella on the costs.
It's a tricky situation, Eddie, and particularly for people at home to understand maybe, because if you said to them, we want to race a Formula 1 car for a year, but we're not happy with 40 million, people at home wouldn't believe that 40 million isn't enough to get these cars on the track for a season.
Well, you know, having used to spending, we'll say, 80 or 100 million, of course, to restrict that then to 40 million, it also gives the advantage if Bernie gets what he wants, and Max to that extent, he wants new teams in there, and it will be to the advantage of a new team coming in that 40 million is much easier to attain than, we'll say, a team coming back from we'll say, 100 million. And it's just one question I'd like to ask Ross, really, which is, for me, as a ex-team principal, how are you going to be happy dividing the pot by 13 when in actual fact it is traditionally 10? I can't imagine you, Frank Williams, or anyone else for that matter, taking a smaller share out of the pot just for the welfare of those new guys coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't affect our pot. If Bernie wants to give some of his money to these new teams, that's up to him.
You know as well as I know. The pot is gradually getting smaller and various other problems. But we were surprised to see that Bernie was offering $10 million to each new team coming in. It certainly wasn't in your day or my day that was around. So no. This is new territory for all of us.
Yeah, I think we need to see it all flush out first before we see what the reality of it all is. But there are 2 open entries in Formula 1 already, and the proposal is to go to 26 cars, another entry. I'd welcome new entries, but also we've got to respect what's already been established.
But not at your cost?
Well, it could be my cost in one area if the sport's healthier and stronger and we get more income from other areas. It's the net cost which is important to us.
Ross, just bringing it back to this weekend, you have an upgrade on the car. Has your simulation delivered the actual lap time on track? Have you gained performance? Yeah,
I mean, we're reasonably happy. We had, with Jensen, we struggled a bit with the balance yesterday. We made some progress today. He's much happier today. But it's a big problem because there's no testing. You introduce a big upgrade and the characteristics of the car are a bit different. It behaves a little bit differently. You know how different this track is from testing, so you come here and it's easy to get lost.
Why would there be a difference between Jensen's feeling with that upgrade and Rubens, who seemed to be quite happy? How do you explain that?
I think driving style, Jensen's very smooth. I think the fact that Rubens was quite aggressive with the car yesterday, attacking the car more. Jensen needs a different sort of balance, and we didn't dial it in straight away. So, but I must say they've made good progress today.
OK, Ross, thank you very much for joining us, and we can see Jensen's nose coming behind us there. You're confident you've got your nose in front still this weekend, eh?
You're never completely confident, but we're not in bad shape.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Good to chat. And if he was completely confident, of course, he wouldn't share that with us on the television, would he? Right, let's move on, because it's not just the teams who are worried about finances at the moment. The future of the British Grand Prix has been called into question over the last couple of weeks after the promoter, Simon Gillette, it seems, had trouble raising the necessary funds to take the race to Leicestershire in 2012. Seriously bad news for fans of motorsport, and we really needed to know a bit more about this, so we sent Jonathan Ledger down to the circuit to talk about a story that's attracted a fair few bad headlines.
The future of the British Grand Prix is again in doubt.
Legal proceedings have been issued against Simon Gillette, the CEO of the company, which leases and runs the Donington Motor Racing Circuit.
The owners at Donington Park are suing the chief executive of the company who leases and runs the circuit.
Local planners, they've been given until the end of June to meet planning conditions at the circuit that's scheduled to host next year's British Formula 1 Grand Prix.
Headlines are always headlines. There's a lot going on in the background that gives us the confidence that we can't go into at the moment, but we have the confidence because we know what's going on behind the scenes.
Simon Gillette has been facing down scepticism from the moment Donington was announced last summer as the new stage for the British Grand Prix. Fears that the project was in financial difficulty only heightened a fortnight ago when long-standing circuit owner Tom Wheatcroft issued a writ over £2.5 million of unpaid rent.
Well, between us and the Wheatcrofts, we have an agreement of ongoing works here. We had a way that we could allocate funds over a period of time during the winter. We've used them elsewhere, and we're working with the Wheatcrofts to resolve that issue. But you should see a resolution on that one very soon.
And you will pay it then? You've got the money to pay it?
Yeah, we'll be in a position to sort that out very soon, and we're working through the detail of that with the Wheatcrofts as we speak.
But it's not going to jeopardise the project, then?
No.
Key to the redevelopment of the site is £100 million worth of funding through a debenture scheme, similar to the new Wembley Stadium. Details were expected in March, but it's understood that negotiations with a new investor have reached an advanced stage, with an announcement likely next month.
Well, the debenture scheme has gone forward as we thought. The research and the first phases of that have come out with the results we wanted. What's changed is the wonderful world of banking at the moment. So we had a bit of an issue with our prime funding source. The bank that we were priming to work with at that point there has decided they're not in the market anymore, so we've had to go and find alternative banks, and there are banks in the market for it, and we're just working through the detail on those now.
Construction of the new facilities, including a new pit and paddock complex, hasn't started as scheduled, following a dispute over the size of the new runoff areas. That's now been resolved, and the circuit will host the British Touring Car Championship and the British Superbikes over the next 2 weekends. But time, as much as money, has become a driving force if the British Grand Prix isn't to disappear from the calendar next year. The pressure to build and be ready for an official Formula One inspection in April 2010 is growing by the day.
When do you think you'll have everything ready, both the dispute with the Wheatcrofts sorted and funding in place so that you can press on and do all the construction work that you want to satisfy yourself, clearly, but also the powers that be in Formula One?
Absolutely. Well, we need to be in a position to start pushing buttons. We've got 9 months for construction, so July is where we need to be in a position to ready to roll everything out. So that's our deadline for pulling all of this together.
You're absolutely confident you can meet that deadline?
Absolutely.
Some people will be amazed to hear you say that, because I know that's been your constant mantra, but there have been so many hurdles, and the hurdles seem to be getting taller, bigger.
They do, but we keep jumping over them, we keep knocking them down. These hurdles will come and they will go, and we'll be there with the Grand Prix in 2010.
You can categorically say, this will happen, read my lips.
Absolutely. We're 110% committed to make sure this happens, and 100% confident it will. It'd be lovely if a few people got behind us, but for the moment, we'll keep doing it on our own.
Well, Eddie, I'm not surprised that Simon Gillette feels a little bit shot at the moment. But everybody wants this Donington Grand Prix to go ahead, although there are negative headlines. I think it's more because people haven't seen firm facts about what's going to happen yet. And until we see firm facts, X, Y and Z is going to happen, it's very difficult for people to sort of believe that it will.
Well, it's quite nerve-wracking time because people, it's like a two-horse race. Is Silverstone absolutely dead? And is the only option Donington? People aren't sure. People has their own view. People now should get behind Donington. Well, certainly should get behind the British Grand Prix. And it looks like the only place to have that at the moment, if Bernie says what he's saying, is Donington. So I would like to see much more positive vibes coming from everybody and more transparency from the people at Donington, because when you don't hear things, people naturally think of the bad side of things.
What should the vibes be coming out of Silverstone? Do you think they should just let everybody know, hey, listen, we're here, we're ready, and we're willing in case Donington can't be ready? Is that the only thing Silverstone can do, do you think?
Yeah, indeed. We know they're ready. They've been successfully running a Grand Prix there for many years. Last time Donington had a Grand Prix was '93. So there's no question that Silverstone will be there to pick up the pieces if Donington don't manage to pull it all together. It's a sorry state to be fighting over, is there going to be or is there not going to be a British Grand Prix, when you consider just such a big influence that Britain is on Formula One racing.
Well, you can see the fans gathering behind us. As much as they're here to have a look at DC and EJ, it's really because we're outside Fernando Alonso's garage. You can see that they certainly generate a lot of interest here in Spain. And I know they wouldn't be happy if they lost their Grand Prix, and I'm sure that all British fans would echo my thoughts that we wouldn't be happy if we lost ours either. Right, time to move on. Understeer. Some drivers love it, others, they just cannot live with it. This is what it's all about. You need to know.
As the drivers approach any corner, they need the front of the car to give a predictable and consistent amount of turn. Then they can place the car precisely for the optimum line. If the front tyres slide across the tarmac surface and away from the corner, and the car doesn't turn enough, this is called understeer. When the driver applies power through to the end of a corner and the front slides wide, it's called power understeer. Understeer makes the car relatively easy to drive, but it's slow and also damages the front tyres.
Now, imagine you've been in Formula One for just over 20 years. You've won a stack load of races, a clutch of world titles. You've discovered some of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen and made a fair few headlines along the way as well. What do you do next? Well, you need to find a hobby, something to calm you down, something nice and relaxing. I don't know, like buying your own football club.
Formula One is my job, it's my passion, it's what I love. Formula One takes 90% of my time, and the rest of 10% is my hobby.
Queen's Park Rangers, what a hobby to have. Owned along with Bernie Ecclestone and Lakshmi Mittal, the London club is the perfect release from the pressures of Formula One.
I have the honor to have the responsibility of the club, but really the club made me take me 30 minutes a day, maybe Saturday go see the match if you play home. You want to see the box?
This is the worst one you have?
It's the worst.
When you turn up here and you see the people starting to come into a team which they are really passionate about, does it make you very proud to be part of this?
No, we are proud because we're saving this club. Last year I believe the limit was 1 hour. To be not QPR anymore, and now everything is much more stable and much more organized, and we invest money in the club, and as well my partner, myself, Mittal and Bernie, and everybody care about the club, and you want to be the best.
Did you watch Formula One, or do you watch it now because of his involvement in your club?
I always watch it anyway, but you always keep an eye on for him and that, because obviously he's part of the club.
He's done really well for the club, he's got us out of a lot of trouble.
Turns up regularly and has an opinion about things, this is good.
It's better than it used to be. It used to be pretty horrible down here, but yeah, it's getting there.
A QPR fan, does that make you a Renault fan?
No. It makes me a McLaren fan.
Some people would have said, did you not want a Chelsea or an Arsenal or a Liverpool, but you're happy with the situation?
Well, it's the same. When we start at Formula One, we start with Benetton. We don't start with McLaren or with Ferrari. And after we beat McLaren and Ferrari, we beat everybody. I mean, because it's not really our business, it's our hobby. And I believe it's much better if you build up from the bottom to the up.
Amazing transformation, I've seen some real bad times at QPR, and since Flavio appeared, invested in the club, strength to strength, we're doing things now we never dreamt of before, signing players we never dreamed of with a great pedigree.
When Bernie doesn't come to the match, will he be phoning you during the match to find out?
I phone him.
You phone him?
No, you watch him.
Do you give him a commentary?
If you are good, yes. If you are bad, nobody. It's a disaster. What you have in QPR Italia is the food.
Saltfish alla Carlina with tomato, capers and cornichons.
Everybody is very surprised to see the hospitality of the QPR.
Chicken spezzatino with wild mushrooms.
We have the best food in England, honestly.
I don't think a lot of people would expect to see the number of celebrities that you can all manage to attract.
Between myself and Bernie, we know a lot of people. And plus we want to put QPR fan club, We don't come here only for see the match, we come here for spend the day.
Lucas, I'm used to seeing you in the paddock. I've never seen you at a football match. Does Flavio make you come here, or do you enjoy it?
No, I really like football. I used to follow a lot in Brazil, but since I came to live in UK, I lost a little bit of this feeling, so I'm just coming back to it.
I came here at the very beginning, and to see the changes that Flavio and his team have done is very impressive. I'm not a football expert, but they seem to be doing okay.
Are you a football fan? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everything that Flavio does, he does it to win it. He doesn't like losing it.
Are you a QPR fan?
Now I am.
I believe everything you do, you need love. Wherever you do in your life, you need to do something you like it, you love it.
Yeah, not a bad hobby, hey? Just a little something for the weekend if the mood takes you. But Eddie, as much as sort of owning a football team as a hobby sends out a certain message to people at home, this sport isn't what it once was. We've already discussed the budget cap so far this morning. ING is set to pull out from Formula One at the end of this season. Do you think Flavio is as much in love with this sport as he once was?
Well, overall, we've just seen Flavio is a hugely charismatic person. He's one of the only people I've ever met who came into Grand Prix racing, won 4 world titles without having gone through all of the early racing days. So for that, everyone gives him credit. And if anyone can turn around the fortunes of Renault, it's him. He has the Midas touch. He'll probably do it with QPR. Don't be surprised if they fight for promotion next year. He's a top man.
Renault were driving and performing like title winners at the end of last season. I guess part of the problem now is that Formula One, much to everybody's surprise, is so tight. The margins between sort of first and 10th are that small that if you're not quite on it 100% of the time, then you suffer. And that's what's happened to Renault, really, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. They've always been a team that have been able to develop well during a season, and we saw that last year, that they came back from a very mediocre start and they were able to win a couple of races towards the end. With this big regulation change that we've seen this year, they've been one of the first teams to come with this double diffuser. It seems to have helped the performance a little bit, but there's still a massive difference between where they are and where Braun and Red Bull are at the moment, leading the pack. So more development's needed. And
Nelson Piquet has struggled a bit so far this season. He said that maybe a cuddle would help him out, but having watched that, even when QPR score a goal, Flavio doesn't cuddle people. It's not going to happen, is it?
No, it doesn't look like it, but it was interesting. You can tell, obviously, Flavio's nationality as an Italian. He's more concerned about the food being the best in the league than whether the team's winning the matches or not.
Yeah, forget about the football, it's all about the food. Right, in a moment we're going to have a little wander down the pit lane. Of course, qualifying is getting closer, just about 25 minutes away. But first, a lot has happened since we were in Bahrain just a couple of weeks ago. Here's Ted with a roundup of the news.
Lewis Hamilton says he won't have a car capable of winning the championship until the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. McLaren have only made a small step forward here.
In our feeling, we'll be better in the car, but for us, we only have a couple of things. It's nothing major, unfortunately, but the team have worked very hard just to get those bits here, so we will do the best job we can with those.
The FIA let McLaren off with a suspended race ban after the team promised that they'd change their culture, having lied to the stewards.
It isn't something that we're an incident that we're proud of or happy of, but I think we've dealt with it as best we can. I think in the heat of the moment some mistakes were made in Australia, and I think we've dealt with that now. We're a few races down the road. We've had a World Motorsport Council hearing. We're concentrating on going forward now.
And moving on to changes for next year, pit stops will be tyres only, no more refuelling. The weight limit will be raised, but it's the prospect of starting the race with 220 litres of petrol on board that's alarmed drivers.
Well, I spoke to my dad about this with the heavy fuel, and I was like, geez, that's going to be challenging. And he was like, well, what the hell do you think we've always been up to in our years in the 1980s?
Also for next year, new F1 teams. The first outfit to confirm they'll be putting in an entry before the deadline closes in 3 weeks' time is US F1.
We've been working on this for 4 or 5 years and kept it under our hats, obviously, till just recently, but time's right to do it.
A couple of GP2 teams are also considering an F1 entry, but this season's only GP2 graduate thinks they would struggle.
The step is really big between GP2 and F1, and people maybe don't understand it so well, but it's so big that it's not easy to make it.
Back to this season, and in addition to Braun, BMW have brought the most significant changes to their car here. And after finishing last in Bahrain, they need them.
The front wing, the nose, engine cooling, the floor, the rear wing. Yeah, I think that's it. We'll have quite a different looking car, but how much it will give is difficult. Team is assuming more or less half a second, so still not enough to beat everybody.
Meantime, Ferrari have debuted their version of a double diffuser, but due to the low position of their gearbox, they haven't been able to fully exploit the concept.
There are not many changes in the diffuser itself, but we've got this second channel on top of it. I think overall the package, not only that component, is a good step forward. That the double diffuser for ourselves is a new thing, so for sure we know that we have got a steep learning curve. It's not the final version, it's just the first one.
And finally, as we were interviewing Heidfeld after the race in Bahrain, Fernando Alonso was looking pale and weak in the background. A case of dehydration left the Spaniard feeling rather faint.
I lost 5.5 kilos in Bahrain, which is absolutely record, and it's not normal because normally I lose 1.5, 2 kilos maximum, but in Bahrain I had a problem with the water system, didn't work, and also we have a problem with the radiator of the car, putting hot gases into the seat, so I burned all my back, and that was taking out water from my body every single lap of the race. So when I finished, I felt not really well enough, and I've been really at home, relaxed all week, and now I'm 100%. But it was a difficult weekend in Bahrain.
Right, well, it's nice and hot here, the sun's out, but nowhere near as hot as it was in Bahrain. And actually, as we walk away from Renault, you'll notice that the crowds get thinner and thinner as we disappear further away from Fernando Alonso's garage. But just talking about Fernando for a moment, 5.5 kilograms of weight lost during a race. I mean, if you look at that, that's almost 10% of his entire body weight, DC. These drivers are so small this year, they can't afford to be losing that kind of weight, can they?
No, it's very unusual. You know, I remember losing up to 4 kilos and feeling pretty ill afterwards. I remember actually being laid out on Ron Dennis's table in his office and having Sid Watkins, who was the chief medical officer at that time, sort of peering into my eyes. So it is a very uncomfortable position for the drivers to be in, and it's something we don't really talk about very often, the physical demands on them. Even losing 2 kilos, you're severely dehydrated, but that's what they train and condition for.
And we've seen Ferrari have brought out a car this week. They think it's sort of 10 kilos lighter to help Kimi Raikkonen, who's a bit heavier than Felipe Massa. Is that the way to go so that drivers have less pressure to lose this weight? Because I have to say, some of them are looking so gaunt.
Well, the big problem is now the emphasis is on driver weight, and I think it's a slight problem because the drivers are becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. The resistance and their tolerance level to actually the endurance factor of a race, and you've just heard from Alonso, I think that's unhealthy, 5.5 kilos. He must have had some other little problem, either a bug of some description or other, but 5.5 kilos is most unusual. David is absolutely correct.
Yeah, there were a couple of problems with the car and him, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, I think actually it takes me back to, remember Alain Prost used to use it as part of his negotiation with the teams. Really? He was so small and so light, he could say to the team, well, you can pay me more money because you won't have to spend it developing the car, and you can have the weight distribution you want. So someone like Nigel Mansell was 30 kilograms heavier than Alain, so he started with a massive disadvantage. So hopefully we don't get into the days of that, and I believe the weight is being raised for next season.
Yeah, but if you were 4'6", you wouldn't be working for us now. You'd be too rich, you wouldn't need to. Now, the reason why I wanted us to pause here is just because there have been so many sort of new parts arriving in the paddock for the cars over this weekend. Boxes being brought in by sort of foot soldiers left, right and centre, and Red Bull have done their fair share of stuff. So you could sort of take us in there and just give us a little look around and explain all the differences, because certainly as far as the non-double diffuser teams are concerned, Red Bull have been so impressive.
Well, indeed, they've been the quickest car in the wet, full stop, and they've been the second quickest car in dry running. And what they have new for this weekend, as we just come in the front of the garage here, actually is this part over here. If we can just, I think we're just catching this top body there, but the front wing is revised for this weekend. Now, just looking at it like that, it's quite difficult to spot the differences, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to actually highlight. But anyway, they have a new front wing package and some amendments to the rear of the car. And I think most of the teams here this weekend have got some form of aero upgrade, as you've mentioned, and they're all just striving for performance. They don't have the opportunity to test it before bringing it to the racetrack, so that means there's a lot more laps taking place on Friday to actually qualify that what they've produced in the wind tunnel has then given the lap time on the racetrack.
Right, let's carry on walking, because I do want to catch up with Patrick Head from Williams if he is in the Williams garage. But it's interesting, Eddie, seeing all of these new sort of upgrades arriving. And Ross Broadley looked pretty confident actually at the end of our interview, because he knows as long as they make one upgrade.
He's the one. The noise here is so extreme. I'm sorry, I could have crossed you there, but I think Ross Brawn, he looks so relaxed. He's so calm in his own skin. He knows that he has a car that everyone else has to catch up with, and for that reason you can see he's got that little, I don't want to say smug appearance on his face, but he knows it's going to take a lot for these guys to catch up with the Brawn team as we see it.
Yeah, well, look who we found, a certain Mr. Patrick Head here. Patrick, lovely to see you. We've been talking so far this morning about new parts arriving for the cars, the budget cap that everybody's talking about, the start of the European season. You've seen it all before. You're an old hand at all this, really, hey?
Yeah, it would always so happen that we start our engines. Oh, that's much better. No, I think every team's got, bits that they brought to their car, and it's to some extent a question of who can develop their car fastest. And quite clearly, Ferrari have made very significant improvement in their car, but I think quite a lot of others as well. And we'll see during qualifying where it lies.
How would you sort of sum up Williams' performance so far this season? Because if people just watch the races alone, they probably wouldn't think you've done too well. But certainly we've been here looking at you in free practice. You certainly seem to have the pace. Perhaps not really had the luck?
Well, we certainly made a bit of a mess of some of the races, obviously with Malaysia and China being wet, which is obviously a massive opportunity, but it was an opportunity which we didn't take. So we haven't got good results, but the car speed has been there most of the time.
Patrick, you've obviously been around for many years in Formula One and designed under...
And yourself,
yeah,
David.
Thank you, Patrick.
Not quite as many.
and then having designed under many different regulations. How do you feel about this set of regulations that you have to lead the team in the design? Is it technically interesting, or do you find it too restrictive?
Well, there are obviously others directly leading the design, and I think, you know, every set of regulations is a challenge which has to be gone at with a real will, and I think our aerodynamicists and our engineers see it that way. It's a new opportunity to take a step forward, but same for everybody. Personally, I liked days of turbo engines and active ride and things like that, but there's so much payback from the aerodynamics that the focus is very strongly there.
And for next year, with no refueling, will that bring another element where the drivers have to really manage brakes and fuel economy?
I mean, yes, it's going to, no refueling means we'll start the races weighing at least 100 kilos more, and maybe with the 15 kilo increase in weight limit, maybe it'll be 115 kilos more, and that will be a serious challenge on the braking systems on the car. And although we are allowed to pit stop for tyres, it'll mean that the drivers who can manage their tyre life, even on the 20 or so laps that they're on a set of tyres, will be doing well, particularly early in the race when the car's very heavy.
Patrick, if I may, I'd just like to ask you, knowing and having worked with you for all those years, with yourself and Frank, I'd like to know what your view is for the capping system, whether it has a ghost in hell's chance of happening, or indeed is it just something that's just put on the table to try and get you guys together to try and curtail the costs?
Well, I think Max Mosley has a habit of getting what he wants. Sometimes it might not go directly to the end game. You would know it well, the process, Eddie. And but in truth, some teams have been spending in Formula One at a level which has really biased the situation a bit. And although there are some that feel that it should be just a free market situation, sometimes it's got absolutely ridiculous, the differential in spending from one end to the other. We've been in favour of a budget cap right from the beginning, but maybe not at the levels that are being talked about at the moment. But of course everybody's interested not only in the budget cap, but in the process by which it's policed, because I think a few teams feel that some will be a bit more creative about how they'll tuck spending away than others. Mentioning no names, of course.
No names, but it could be a process that goes on for some time. Listen, Patrick, we know that you're busy. Okay. Good luck this weekend. Right. Let's hope that you get the luck and you make those decisions that help you out, and we'll see you very soon. All right, take care. Bye. Thank you very much. Now then, you may think that you know a driver's steering wheel pretty well, but it's not just what happens on the front to a driver's steering wheel that matters. What's on the back is pretty important as well. Here's Martin.
Very narrow in the pedal area of the cockpit of a Formula One car. There's only room for a throttle and a brake pedal. The clutch moves up onto the steering wheel with these paddles. The drivers are just moving little potentiometers. They're not directly connected to the clutch at all. Often they'll release 1 to 50% on the start line, and the final launch will come from the second clutch paddle. The clutch is only used on the start and in the pit lane. More paddles on this wheel. It belongs to Fernando Alonso from Renault. This is the gear shift paddle, upshift and down. Some drivers like a rocker, so they can push it either way. Then 2 further paddles. Some drivers might use this to engage the KERS power. Alonso uses his, instead of adjusting these switches on the front of the wheel, so having to look down and take his hand off the wheel, they can set these up to adjust, say, engine or differential parameters. So it's busy on the front and equally busy on the rear.
Qualifying is getting closer in Spain. Time to bring you up to speed with the circuit de Catalunya, where the challenges are twofold. For the fans, it's getting a ticket. For the drivers, it's just trying to overtake.
The Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona, very, very fast turn 3, very fast turn 9. Heikki Kovalainen obviously had a shunt there last year.
Basically, I like speed tracks that have a lot of high speed, and Barcelona is one of my favorites.
The run to 10-1 is really special. Everybody stand up in the grandstand, moving the flags.
Very good atmosphere, obviously, because of Fernando.
Yeah, this is Barcelona. This is special for me.
It is probably one of the most difficult, not as difficult as Monaco, but one of the most difficult track to overtake.
Long front straight potentially can do some overtaking in turn one if you've got a good top speed. It's challenging to get it right. One lap is some fast corners and some very tight part, like especially the end.
The corners where you can make up most time around here is mainly the slow speed corners, especially the last sector probably. The last couple of corners you can really win or lose a lot there.
The slowest corner is turn 10, which is after the back straight, and some people probably goes to first gear. It's actually a famous testing track for the team, so everybody has got optimized setups already, so it's difficult to have an advantage.
Very, very tough on aerodynamics because there's a lot of high-speed corners, so if your car isn't working aerodynamically very well, you've got no place to hide around there at all.
This track is very difficult to overtake, and the best places to try to win is always from the front.
Well, David, you've got a fair share of experience at driving at this circuit. Of course, you made your debut here way back in 1994. Of course, that was just after the sad death of Ayrton Senna. You took his place in the car. What were your memories of racing that weekend?
Well, actually, when we're talking to Patrick there, I was going to remind them of when I first sat in the car. I went on the radio and asked him, do I turn left or right out of the garage? And I was just joking, of course, but he came back on. He was fumbling around to get his finger on the button, and he was like, turn right, turn right. Anyway, of course, I knew which way to go, but it seems a long time ago now, 15 years, but I had a lot of fun, a lot of technical challenges through that time in Formula One, many different regulations, so, you know, it continues to be the pinnacle of motorsport and the ultimate challenge for car, team and driver.
Many of us have been thinking about Ayrton over the last few days, Eddie. Many of us can't believe that it's actually been so long since he did pass away, but I think it's probably worth us while we're here just having a look at one of the classic moments from this circuit. 1991, it was the first race here, and it was Ayrton and Nigel Mansell, and they had a real toe-to-toe battle throughout the whole thing, didn't they?
Well, this man was quite special. 1982, many years ago, Ayrton was not De Silva, of course. He was De Silva at the time, and he drove our car for us, so I knew him quite well, and an outstanding guy.
Touching, Mansell gets in there, and Senna back on the inside.
Well, that's James Hunt there, of course, another former world champion who was commentating on the race there. It's surprising, actually, looking at the cars, you forget how much they've changed. They almost look unrecognisable, don't they?
Yeah, the cars were much bigger at that time, of course, and you know, they had to carry all the fuel for the race, like we'll see next year. You know, there's classic Nigel and Ayrton racing here that we're seeing. You see Nigel just squeezing, just trying to psych him out as they take the run down to that first corner. Interestingly, Ayrton's holding a completely straight line, and it's Nigel who's playing the game of chicken. You know, he's saying, going, move over, I'm going to take this corner. Great stuff. I remember that very well watching it.
It's fantastic watching that, and of course that was also when Jordan were racing in the early days of Jordan. I think it was Alex Zanardi, you gave him his debut here that same year, 91.
91, honestly, these were heady days, and Zanardi, just like he getting into Senna's seat. Michael Schumacher was relieved of his duties by, we won't call the team down the road there, but when we found Michael, he was gone and Zanardi got the seat. So he was an outstanding young driver, both of them in fact, but obviously Zanardi something special.
OK, well, that was 91. This is 2009, and let's find out what the thoughts are of our commentary team today ahead of the qualifying session. And Jonathan Ledyard and Martin Brund, really the question in the paddock is, despite all the new updates and the changes to the cars, can Brawn keep their noses in front? What do we think up there?
Well, for race pace, you'd have to say yes. In terms of qualifying pace, should well be certainly in good shape. Red Bull should be up there, and I just wonder whether Ferraris might be a little bit closer to the front than we've seen them so far.
They need to polish the mirrors on those Brawn GP cars. They're still very fast, but the pack are catching.